What's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to another lesson on the right mindset. Today, we're going to go over basically mastering world building, creating believable cultures and societies. So, in this lesson, we'll dive deep into the art of creating cultures and societies that breathe life into your fictional worlds. Whether you're a budding writer or a seasoned wordsmith, join us to discover the secrets of crafting immersive and original cultures and societies. That's today. Let's do it. Let's hit the intro, everybody. Okay. I love that music. All right, so we just throw this right out. If you haven't already, and you really want to, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. Let's move it on. Exploring cultures and societies. Society. So, what are cultures and societies? Well, cultures are are basically the intricate tapestries of shared beliefs, values, traditions, and practices that define a group of people within a fictional world or in life in general. These elements shape how individuals within that culture perceive and interact with the world around them. Cultures encompass everything from religious beliefs, uh, moral codes, to art, music, and culinary traditions. Societies, on the other hand, are large structures that emerge from the interactions of individuals within a culture. They include social hierarchies, uh, governance systems, economic structures, and laws, among other things. In essence, societies are the organizational frameworks that govern how people live together within the world. And understanding the distinctions between cultures and societies is vital for telling stories because cultures provide depth to individual characters and shape their behaviors, while societies create the overall rules and structures that influences how cultures interact and clash in your narrative. Real quick, the simplified version of this is ultimately a culture uh, is the upbringing of, like, for example, I'm Sicilian. So it's not uncommon for Sicilians to be Catholics or Christians in some point. So you grow up in not that I am Catholic, but you grow up Catholic. Yeah. At one point or another in the '80s, you had a mirror wall. Uh, everybody has to be baptized. Uh, you know, there's a lot of yelling and screaming at social gatherings of joy. There's pastas and there's like 8 courses of meals. Your grandmother is a very specific style of cooking, and there's a hierarchy to the family. Traditionally, things have changed, but traditionally, the man in a Sicilian household runs it, and then the woman runs the house, but um, but again, things have changed. But that's like a cultural example of, like, maybe how I grew up with a massive family that spread. My mom had like 9 siblings. You know what I'm saying? So it's like lots of aunts. Um, but society would be like how we live in New York. There are specific laws in New York, and there's like, owning or renting a place in New York is different than owning and renting a place in, say, the South. The price differences. That's all. So that's society. Culture would be like the way we bring ourselves up within a specific set of rules and beliefs that we have created. Uh, and by the way, you can set your own cultures. Like in real life, you could just create your own way of life. You could create your own traditions, your own way of thinking for beliefs, whatever. Culture, you just have to maintain that. If you have children, you bestow upon them the things that you believe in, and they could be different than what you grew up with because you're changing your culture, your personal culture. And then society is the, where you live, like the rules and this is the laws, etc., etc. So, real quick, distinguishing between cultures and societies. Cultures primarily influence the personal identities, their beliefs, the behaviors of the characters. For example, characters' adherence to a particular religion or cultural tradition can motivate their actions and decisions, while a society, on the other hand, affect the broader aspects of your story, such as the political conflicts or social classes and the rules characters must adhere to. The structure of society can determine who has power, who is oppressed, and how conflicts are resolved. By understanding these differences, you can effectively weave cultures and societies into your narrative, creating a rich and believable world. Here's some guidelines for world building, okay? Consistency. If you understand your cultures and societies and what they should adhere to with rules and logic, that's important. Because if you have, let's say in your fantasy world, you have a group of people from a very specific area of the world, you know, but you're in like more of a mecca, a city, like where everybody, like it's just a smorgasbord of life. And if I'm going to use elves as an example, you see elves in a highly populated human city. Those elves, even if they're not hanging out with each other, will probably have specific tonality to them because of their cultural upbringing. And depending on what kind of elves they are, what cultures those elves grew up around, they would be different, but you would maintain that consistency. And then the city itself will probably have a different form of societal rules than, say, the elven cities, if it's a human city, just because it happens. You also want to maintain conflict. Consider how cultural and society differences can lead to tension, conflict, or cooperation in some situations, right? And you also want your cultures and your societies to have a sense of evolution. They change over time, just like real worlds. Think about how external factors, hey kitten, internal shifts or historical events might have influenced these changes. I mean, let's look at the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Mongolian Empire, and now in America you have the states, right? The United States that exists now, but it didn't exist when Rome existed. Boats, that was really the biggest form of because like with uh with boats you can only go so far, right? But then planes change things and travel changed things, and as people migrated and things evolved and changed a little bit. So you have to look at your time frames, the history, the evolution of the growth of your world. Because if you have 1,000-year history to your world, there's a very strong chance that the cultural reality will not be the same as when it first started versus where it is after 1,000 years. And even the idea that um, events would change things or circumstances would change things. So it's important to know. And of course, the relevance. Like you want to ensure that the elements you introduce are relevant to what's going on in your story. And everything you create should serve your narrative and character development. Sometimes people will just make up things, but it doesn't really do it. Hey, kitty cat. Bye, kitty cat. All right. Really? Really, too? Cats. Anyway, you want to emphasize eh, you want to emphasize that there's no one size fits all approach to world building because every story is unique, and the cultures and the societies you create should align with your specific narrative goals. Okay? Boom. Crafting believable cultures. So, the art of constructing unique and convincing cultures in your fictional world gives you a chance to really begin to understand your world fundamentally. So, if you're going to start with a comprehensive overview of your culture, think of some of these things. One, core values and beliefs. You want to explore how to define the fundamental principles, beliefs, and values that govern your characters. This is everything from morals to their faith to just their traditions, you know? Okay. Step two, you might want to step on traditions and customs, dive into the rich tapestry of traditions, rituals, and customs that give your culture depth. For example, you might say, every rising season of the sun or heat, like summer, like you say, you call your summer like, the rising burn of the gods rage, that makes us have to travel from here to the river of Chea, right? Well, that's a tradition for the people that live in that one area, and every summer they know that they have to travel to that river because they won't be able to survive away from the river. Okay, so that's an example of a tradition. And then step three is language and communication. Every culture has some sort of importance to their language, some sort of dialect, some sort of script to it, communication norms. I mean, look at the United States. You have Northern dialect, Southern dialect, Western dialect, Midwest dialect. You have, and then within it, like Long Island. See, I grew up on Long Island and Brooklyn, right? So my Brooklyn comes out sometimes, which is more like that, and my Long Island comes out more when I'm hanging out with Long Island friends. So there's also within those areas, me growing up, I had lots of friends, and all my friends didn't sound like me, and not all my friends looked like me, and not all my friends acted like me, and not all my friends grew up like me. And even, let's just say, I talk about 5 or 6 friends that I hung out all the time. you know uh, I had Jewish friends, I had Spanish friends, I had Puerto Rican friends, black friends, Italians, Irish, you name it, right? And every single one was completely different. And that's how you should really look at your culture in your world. Is And by the way, um you have total freedom over this. It could be literally made up completely. You could be like, you know what, they wear like hats on their ears, like that's a culture thing. It doesn't matter, it's whatever you want it to be. All right. I would suggest, just for clarification, if you're going to use cultures or things that have some sort of connection to real world, be conscious of how you utilize it. Um, you know, if you don't know anything about a culture and you take from it and you put it into your stories, make sure you at least understand it. However, I do believe that you can take an idea of a culture. For example, in Catholicism, you baptize your kids, right? So baptisms can be something you add to your world, but maybe you change the way it's done. Maybe it's baptism by fire. Maybe it's baptism. It's not directly related to the religion. Maybe baptism is just a ceremony that allows you and your people in that world to consider themselves adulthood. So they do it when they're 15 or 16, whatever, but the idea of a baptism exists. But maybe if you're not a Catholic and you don't want to offend the Catholics, but you like some of the concepts of the Catholic faith, you take ideas and then you kind of like put your own spin on it. And now, you're not necessarily taking away from Catholicism. You're just, I want a ceremony that celebrates adulthood, and I like the idea of dipping them back in a river, or splashing water on them in from whatever whatever the case may be. So, but be conscious of what you're doing. The other thing is, I'm going to dive into the three fundamentals I just said: the core values and beliefs, traditions and customs, and language and communication. I'm gonna kind of jump into those a little bit more. So, core values and your beliefs. Religious beliefs. Think about the gods, the deities, or spiritual beliefs that hold significance for your culture. You also want to touch on their moral codes. Examine the moral principles that guide people and behavior within that culture, and ethical dilemmas. Consider the dilemmas that characters from this culture might face based on their core values. Now, in my story world, the fantasy world, gods are actually a part of the world. Depending on where you are and how much they're worshipped, you could see them walking around and be like, oh, they exist. Though some people, though, believe that they're just really powerful creatures. They might be like, I don't have humans, I have Hunmarians. They might be like, oh, it's just a powerful Hunmarian or a powerful Valus or a powerful whatever, right? And so that's there's an ethical dilemma, there's moral codes, there's religious beliefs, there's positions, right? So they all change depending. Step 2, with the traditions and customs, really think about ceremonies, such as rites of passage, okay, weddings, or religious observations. Maybe there are holidays. Explore the cultural celebrations and festivals or rituals. Examine everyday rituals and customs. In my world, I have a thing that's celebrated during what would be not necessarily Christmas, but during the winter. So during the winter, there's a celebration. Coming together, because everything kind of dies during the winter because it's snow and it's cold. So people come together to celebrate life. So to counteract what is going on in the world, they celebrate this tradition where they celebrate life, and they huge bonfires, and people usually are in a time of peace during that, etc., etc. So I also have rites of passage. So I have people that live out in the plains or in the forests or near the water, and they have a rite of passage when you're 16 or 18, depending. I have things where people aren't considered an adult until they get married. So they don't get the rights of an adult until they're married. Why? Because their culture believes that you have to have marriage, because marriage leads to children, children leads the family, and it grows the community. If you don't get married, you're always going to be considered not an adult. No matter how old you are, they look at you differently. And that's a thing, right? So anyway. And language and communication. The power of language is that there are different dialects. And I know you're like, I'm writing a novel. In my story, Valus language, High Valus, was one of the first spoken languages, and now there's just Common Valus. And like my world, everyone basically speaks Valus as a form of communicating through all trade and everything like that. But then there's separate languages. There's Tuani, there's Humerian, there's Otor. So there's different languages. But with the Valus, if you're from Nordragas or Sudragas or Nudiri, the Valus dialect is different. And in the book, I have characters comment, and it's like, that sounds. What are you from What are you from Nordragas? You have a Nordragas twang to it, or something like that. Or I notice you pronounce your s's different. You hold your s's a little longer, or whatever the case may be. So you don't have to really explain it too deeply, but you could have characters react to that. Okay. Do you want to? Let's see. No, wait, moving on. Okay. So how do you building authentic societies? That's important. And the way we do that, there's three things that you should keep in mind. Social structure, which is designing the hierarchies, social classes, and roles within your society. You want to understand the governance and laws, so delve into the creation of governing bodies, legal systems, and rules of laws. And then, of course, economy and resources. Discover the intricacy of your social economic systems, trade, and resources. So let's go into those things. So social structure. Social structure is your caste system, your power structures, your social mobility. Can people move up and down in social structure? If somebody, let's use Western ideology with the kings and queens. Are all kings through the blood lineage, or can you become a king? Um, what makes you a king? If there is a monarch, are you only allowed to be in that monarch if you're related to the family, or can you earn a spot in there? Those are things to think about. If you're going to just create a whole new system, right, a caste system, are there the workers, the leaders, the whatever, and breaking it up that way so everybody has a role, and whatever their role is, that's what they are born into, those roles. Now, can they move between roles? Maybe. uh, I have a society. I have the 5 spirit tribes, and one of the societies is the Naradita, and their thing is everybody can go try to be whatever they want. Gender is not a thing. Like, I mean, gender is, there are men and women that they try to get married and have kids, like they want that, but they don't care if you're a man or a woman. If you want to be a warrior, you can try to be a warrior. You can train to be a warrior, and then you take the tests. If you fail the tests, you could train more, but you're not considered part of the warrior class until you pass the test. Eventually, you're going to realize you can't pass the test, so you have to try a different test. And you could go for something else. You could the shamans, or leadership, or whatever the case may be. I have Dreyus, stuff like that, right? So, but everyone has the opportunity to try for it, and then they just have to pass the test or not. They all have trials that they have to do, right? So that's an example of allowing the caste system to be, they're malleable. The same thing with their leaders. There is like a family of leaders, but also you could be selected. The council can select you, right? The elder council can select you. All right. When you're talking about laws and governance, is it a monarchy? Is it a democracy? Is it a dictatorship? Right? What about legal codes? How the laws work. Are they fair? How are they enforced? And of course, your justice system. Consider how justice is administrated. So, think about, maybe it's just you get cast out if there's some cultures in my world where if you break the society law of whatever city, town, village, or have say whatever, the entire community gets together and they all vote, right? And then if they vote for you to be kicked out, you get kicked out. If they vote for you to be killed, you get killed, right? Same thing. So, but then there are other systems where the entire town vote for a 5 group council that always determines the outcome. So the entire town gets together and they all vote for 5 different people to represent the voice of the people, and they come together and they handle all the votes or whatever. However, if you're voting outside of what the people want too often, they demand a revote, and then there's a revote, right? So, however, I also have monarchies. I have dictatorships. I have an emperor. So you never know. Economy and resources. So you want to understand how the economy works, how money works. Is it capitalism, socialism, feudalism? Is there trade and commerce? Can you trade in resources? Can you trade in time? Can you services? Is it coins? I have Sornma coins. I have coins. They're like round, they're triangle, they're square. They're all different shapes, different colors, and they all represent a different form of currency, right? And then, of course, resource allocation. In our world, oil is considered a pretty good resource, right? If you work in the oil industry, you make a couple dollars. However, if you're in the, let's say, eyelash industry, where you just collect eyelashes. Well, I found eyelashes. I collect them. Do you want to buy them? People like, no, I don't care. Right. So You got to think about that. Um, it's important, like ultimately, when it comes to societies, I mean, in your world, you can make it all the same thing, or you could break it up. Each city's different, each kingdom's different, each region's different. Like, I don't have just kingdoms; I have regions. I have, whatever. I break up the terminology for different areas. Different continents have different rules, different locations, whatever. Different provinces, etc. And you could do whatever you want with that. And it's important to not really like overthink it and not write your story, but have general understanding. What are the unspoken rules of your world? Like how we have a silent contract with people around us. I don't hurt you, you don't hurt me. That's a silent contract. We don't have to say that. We know that if I meet somebody respectfully, I shouldn't punch them in the face as much as I hope they don't punch me in the face, especially if I'm behaving, if I'm not being annoying or pushing them to hit me, etc., etc. That's an unspoken rule. So, do you have unspoken rules? And that also comes down to a couple other things, So keep that in mind when you're working on that. Oh yeah, final thought. Final thought. Got something in my eye. It's my finger. All right. As we conclude this creative journey, remember that crafting cultures and societies is an opportunity to breathe life into your story, ultimately allowing it to feel lived in. Okay? Specific cultures and societies can shape your characters, drive conflicts, and enrich your plot. So don't be daunted by the details, embrace them as opportunities for exploration. Come up. Every aspect of your world building should serve your narrative's unique needs. So unleash your imagination and write fearlessly. Your creativity knows no bounds, and your stories deserve to be told. And ultimately, what that means is maybe you don't have a full understanding of what your cultures are and your society rules are. Well, there's no need to go into the depth of something if it's not a part of your narrative. So if you allow your narrative to, say, bring you to, the city of blah, right? And there you want it narratively, warriors, let's say you're writing fantasy, warriors are not allowed in that city. And you come up with an idea that because too many times the city has been warriors are the ones that take over the city and there's no control. So now it's a city filled with scholars and priests or religious people and minstrels. It's a creative city, right? And if you walk in there as a warrior, they tell you to please leave. If you don't leave, then you get arrested, right? And then you fight yourself out, and it just proves their point, right? So narratively, that creates something. So the city of doesn't like the warriors, right? But if your character isn't a warrior and they're going into that city, you don't ever have to bring that up. You don't ever have to bring it. Just it's not important. It doesn't affect the narrative. And a few quick things. Let's get into this. Breathing life into your storytelling is ultimately, and let me reiterate that cultures and societies are not mere background details. They are dynamic elements that breathe life into your storytelling. They create a lived world. Okay. And they also help shape characters and their driving conflicts, religious beliefs, value systems, morals, societal norms. All this affects how your characters do or do not do something, say or do not say something. One of my protagonists, they're a warrior and they believe in protecting people, but they struggle with killing. They don't want to kill because they think every time they kill, no matter how much good they do in the world, they're going to end up in Catium, which is my world's hell, right? Instead of Torin, which is my world's heaven. Okay, not that I have it, but it's the afterlife. I'm just to simplify the explanation, right? So Catium and Torin, right? And they struggle with that. They go, I have to kill to protect myself, but it's still killing, and that's a big struggle for them. So it helps do a lot, including enrich the plot, because now every time they kill, it's not just they're killing and running. Every death, every kill is going to affect that character. And to enrich your plot, you want to highlight that your cultures and societies are a part of the narrative, that they exist, that characters are not walking outside untouched by the world around them. They're not going to a city just because they need to go to that city for a plot point. That city creates new elements when they leave that city. The way they camp, the way they travel, the way they interact with people. Maybe there's a religion like, maybe you have the religion of blue and they don't get along with people who celebrate, right? So the blues and whenever they meet each other, maybe they traditionally or naturally just have agitation towards each other. Maybe if you establish that, then it'll be interesting if somebody who is a blue and they actually get along, and you're like, that's outside the norm. That's an interesting narrative. But you have to at least establish that they don't get along. I know I sound weird, but I'm just saying. And when it comes down to it, the one thing you just have to remember is, do I need to get into this cultural thing and this societal thing? Well, does it affect the narrative? That's really a question you got to ask yourself. If it does, then yes. Not that you have to explain it to the people who are reading in whatchamacallit, complete detail, where it's like, all right, I got, it's all exposition. No, you just show it through character existence, their beliefs and their being, So, in summary, crafting vibrant cultures and societies is a vital aspect of world building. These elements have the power to shape characters, drive conflicts, and enrich your plot. And writers should approach this process with confidence, using every detail as an opportunity for creative exploration. But ultimately, their unique stories deserve to be brought to life through the intricate tapestry of cultures and societies they create. Next video. The next video in this series will focus on mapping your world. Stay tuned for our next lesson, where we basically go over the essentials for mapping out your world, your maps, the storytelling, how they enhance immersion, and the practical tips for creating your own fictional maps. I will not be showing you how to design a map. However, I am thinking about starting a playlist where I design maps just to design them and show you like elements, like, the best way to do rivers and stuff. Because I have programs where I do my own maps because I design maps for people. This video is going to be more of a spoken word. It's going to explain things the way you should look at your maps and your worlds, like where a city should go. How do you determine if it is a city or a town or a village or a hamlet? Like, how do you determine those things? So we'll go into that kind of stuff. Question: what's the most challenging aspect of world building for you? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. I guess that's everything. As always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye. I love you.